Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. In today's webinar, we'll be talking about the implementation of ERP and its optimization. I'm Noor with you speaking, and we're going to start with the slideshows right now. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. So let me share some eye-opening realities about ERP implementations that might surprise you. As you can see in the screen, over 70% of the ERP initiatives, they fail to meet their goals. And as many as 25% of these projects, they fail catastrophically. Now, the statistics here are not meant to be discouraging you, but if anything, it's supposed to be helping you approach an ERP project with clear eyes and proper preparation. The financial impact of these failures can be staggering. Companies lose more than the initial investment. They also face operational costs, lost productivity, and missed market opportunities. But here's the encouraging part. With proper planning and realistic expectations, these pitfalls are completely avoidable. The most successful implementations that we have seen, they share common elements, and we'll explore it together during the session today. More common than not, you will find that the root cause analysis has nothing to do with technology. It's all about the approach to the implementation, the mindset of going through the digital transformation journey. Now, successful companies, they embrace the process change and focus on the user adoption, whilst the struggling companies, they insist on bending the system to match their existing processes. Let me share with you 5 major challenges that are seen repeatedly within an ERP implementation. These are just not theoretical problems, they are real hurdles that organizations face, and understanding them will help us navigate the implementation journey more successfully. When organizations lack a clear strategy, as you know, everything starts with a vision. They often delve into the implementation, focusing purely on software features. We have seen companies, they get excited all about the new capabilities of Odoo, especially with the release of version 18, but without linking these specific features to specific business objectives. Now, the challenge of meeting unrealistic timelines and budget is more of a reality check, right? And it hits you particularly hard because even the most seasoned project managers can get caught off guard here. The reality is an ERP implementation is complex. We're not just installing another software, we're transforming how people work. We'll also talk about the resistance to change, which is the human factor. This is such an interesting topic to talk about because people naturally worry about how changes will affect their daily work, sometimes their responsibilities and their own roles within the company. So addressing these concerns openly and honestly makes a world of difference in project success. Now, another silent killer is the customization overload. Like it or not, the consulting team, they will always challenge you very hardly and very tough on your customization requests. Because from our experience, it usually starts with one reasonable customization request, and then the next thing you know, it blows up into one customization leads to another, and before you know it, the system becomes increasingly complex, which will directly impact your maintenance cost and the upgrading as well. Last but not least is the data management, and it might sound a bit technical, but it's really about how business accuracy and reliability is maintained. Now think about the current business processes and business data as the foundation for your future operations. Clean, accurate data migration doesn't just happen. It requires careful planning and execution. Organizations that invest time in data cleaning and early data cleaning, they save themselves a lot of hours of troubleshooting later on. Now, these challenges, they might sound daunting, but they are not really unpredictable, and we know how to tackle them. Throughout the discussion today, I will share practical strategies that have helped organizations successfully navigate these challenges. Starting with the Odoo implementation approach. as I'm sure a lot of you know already, we have our own unique implementation methodology that's been in enhancement over the past 10, 20 years. Now, we have developed two different distinct implementation methodologies, both of them applicable to different size of companies. Now, in terms of the SMEs, these are usually the companies that have never used an ERP. That's the first digital transformation journey for them. And usually they don't have an open budget or, let's say, a bigger budget. They will tend to have very limited budget. So they want to see results straight away. So the aim here is to get them live as fast as possible, train the end users, and then expand and scale as the company grows. Now, a big part of that so prioritizing the workflows and not the features. So at Odoo, we take a different approach and we start breaking down the scope of work to deliver immediate results because they can't afford 12-month implementation. So what we truly focus on is the business value rather than getting caught up in feature requests. Begin by identifying the critical processes that directly impact daily operations and revenue generation. When evaluating requirements, always ask, what business problem does this solve, rather than what features do we want? Because in most cases, Odoo standard features and functionality will often cover about 80% if not more of the business requirements. So by prioritizing these standard features, you can achieve faster implementation times and lower the costs. Now, every customization request should be challenged with two key questions. The first, can we achieve the same business outcome using standard features? And the second, is the business impact worth the implementation's effort and ongoing maintenance costs? You have to remember that SMEs have very limited resources, so a successful implementation isn't about implementing every feature perfectly. It's about delivering the highest business impact within time and budget constraint. Now, I have kept this on all of the slides so that sticks with us. In Odoo, what we consider a successful project is when we onboard users on time and within budget. On to the next step of the implementation for SMEs. We don't follow here a typical waterfall method. What we do is we have multiple go lives and not one big bang. So iterative deployment is crucial because it reduces risks and accelerates time to value. Now, instead of trying to implement everything at once, we have to break the project into smaller manageable phases or smaller victories. So when users see immediate benefits from early deployments, they become more engaged and supportive of subsequent phases. We typically start with the core business functions, the essential process that keep your business running day to day. For a distribution company, this might mean beginning with inventory and sales. For a company that's in services, we might focus on project management and invoicing. The key here is to identify what drives your revenue and start there. Another advantage of this approach is that each phase becomes a learning opportunity, allowing your team to build confidence with the system gradually, which enhances ultimately the user adoption and the utilization rates across the board. Now, we can also apply lessons from each go live phase to improve the next one. And I have seen this approach drastically reduce stress on teams whilst improving the overall adoption. Odoo for enterprise market and for mid-market and enterprise. When we talk about enterprise implementations, we're entering a whole different league compared to SME deployments. Think of it as the difference between building a house and constructing a city. They both need solid foundations, but the scale and complexities are worlds apart. Now, each characteristic on the slide, it brings its own set of unique challenges that shapes how we approach these projects. When we talk about complex organizational structures, we're dealing with multiple legal entities, various departments, and often different geographical locations. I have just been working with a factory that operates across 3 different continents. Obviously, each country has its own operation, they have their own process flows within each factory, and they need different sort of reporting considering the localized solutions that we have in Odoo. Another important one is the stakeholder management, which becomes particularly interesting in enterprise settings. Unlike smaller implementations where decision makers are usually the business owners, 1 or 2 persons, we're typically working with a diverse group of stakeholders. Picture a room with a CFO that's concerned with financial controls, and an operational manager who's concerned with efficiency, and IT worried about system integrations. Each have their own valid but sometimes competing priorities. So our job is to align all of these different perspectives towards common goals. It's a delicate balance between being inclusive yet staying efficient. Another one is cross-departmental dependencies. Obviously, with the high level of complexity in an enterprise environment, a change in one department's process will have a rippling effect across the organization. Take, for example, a change within the procurement process. It affects finance, warehouse operations, and even sales planning. We need to map these dependencies carefully and ensure changes are coordinated across all of the affected areas. And last one is regarding the compliance and risk management, which is particularly crucial for enterprises as well, because we're not just implementing a software, as I said earlier, we're putting in place systems that need to meet various regulatory requirements, audit standards, and corporate policies. The stakes are simply higher. A minor disruption can have a major rippling effect across the whole organization. And here is an example of a typical project life cycle of implementing with Odoo. As you can see, the first phase is all about the pre-sales activities. With this type of implementation methodology, even the pre-sales differs a little bit, where you have extra complicated tools like ROI and gap analysis. You do a lot of POCs at times, and then we walk into the implementation. Now, notice here that a critical point in this, or milestone in this project implementation, is the kickoff meeting. And this is where we transform all of the planning into action. So these sessions, they set the tone for the entire implementation journey, and typically it takes about 5% of the project timeline. So we'll walk through our implementation methodology, we'll break down each phase and what it means for your team. You'll learn about our iterative approach, or the agile methodology that we apply, and how we handle testing and what we need from each team at each stage. This transparency helps everyone understand their part in the journey. And we also do decide on the roles and responsibilities, and we clearly map them out. So we have to establish who makes decisions, who provides input, and most importantly, who is your single point of contact on the client side. Because this person will become the main communicator between the two teams, and they have to have the authority to make decisions, and obviously because it will dictate the rest of the project. Now, in terms of project governance framework, what we do here, especially for larger implementations, clear oversight and decision-making are a must for success. The steering committee will typically consist of key decision makers who shape the project direction. More usually, you will have your CEO or the CFO, the department heads of impacted areas, the Odoo project director, and sometimes the project leader in case we need detailed insights. They usually meet on monthly basis to review progress, remove organizational roadblocks, address escalated issues, and make critical decisions that impact project scope or direction. For our project management team, we have found a structure that consistently delivers results. At the helm, we'll have the project director who manages stakeholder relationships and ensures that we are all aligned with the business objectives at all times. They are supported by our project team leader who drives day-to-day implementations and make tactical decisions. Now, on the back end, there will always be an app expert. Think of them as technical specialists who perform crucial peer reviews, especially during the gap analysis phase. They bring deep product knowledge and can often suggest standard solutions where others might default to customizations. Now, we have seen countless scenarios where an app expert review will literally save weeks of development work. On the client side, as we mentioned before, most important is the SPOC. You have to maintain a single point of contact at all times. You have to work closely with the key users who will then become the champions for their respective departments. What makes this structure effective is the clear escalation pathways. Day-to-day decisions rest with the project leader and the SPOC, but significant issues can be quickly escalated to the project director and ultimately to the steering committee if needed. On to my favorite part, the gap analysis. Gap analysis usually takes 10 to 15, it accounts for 10 to 15% of the whole project. But it does set the foundation for everything that follows. In a lot of cases, our end users will have a great idea of what they want to achieve eventually. But when it comes to translating all of these business requirements and the interdependencies that's happening between the departments, we can get lost in translation. And that's one of the main reasons why we do the gap analysis. So we start with structured stakeholder interviews. We use mind mapping techniques to capture both stated and unstated requirements. Well, I find this approach incredibly useful because it helps uncover the why behind the process and not just the what. For instance, when interviewing a finance team recently, we discovered that their complex approval workflow wasn't a requirement, but a response to past issues that could be solved differently in Odoo. In business requirement assessment, we look at 3 key areas: current processes, pain points, and future needs. We ask questions like, what's your biggest challenge in operations? Or what would make your job significantly easier? These insights then help us to prioritize what truly matters versus what's nice to have. When aligning on system capabilities, we focus on demonstrating the standard Odoo features to address business needs. This is where we often find opportunities for process improvement. And this is where our clients truly benefit from having industry-specific consultants that can give you insight into the best practices of each industry and hence will help you to optimize your business processes. But we also ask our clients to be flexible in this regard because sometimes it takes a lot to change a process. The output then becomes a blueprint for the implementation success. So we map out clear phases, define resources needs, and set realistic timelines based on our findings. This becomes our guiding document throughout the whole implementation. On to change management excellence. Change management excellence, it's a full cycle approach really. It's a thread that runs throughout the entire implementation journey. As you have seen on the previous slide, where the pre-sales activities were happening, a big part of change management also relies on the salespeople to ensure that when the handover to the implementation team is taking place, that they give them insights on the risks associated with the project. So we begin with a comprehensive organization readiness assessment. It all starts at the pre-sales, as I mentioned, to identify potential resistance points early. Now, this is about understanding the human element of the change. So we look at how different departments currently work, what their pain points are, and what might make them resistant to change, which gives us valuable insights where we need to focus our change management efforts. For example, in a factory that has never used digital systems, we can think of the shop floor staff. If they are not aware of how to use digital systems, then we need to give that input to the implementation team so they know that they will allocate more hours or training session towards this particular group of users. Now, the stakeholders also impact the analysis in our roadmap for managing the expectations and providing support. We identify who will be the most affected by the change and what specific support they will need to succeed. This might mean different approaches for different departments. What works for finance might not work for operations. So communication here becomes the strongest or the most powerful tool. A key note to remember here is change management is all about establishing consistent and clear communication channel throughout the full project cycle. Now, during the implementation, we focus on building a network of champions. The gap analysis phase is particularly important because this is where we identify the key influencers in each department. These champions become our allies in driving the change. They help translate technical features into business benefits for their colleagues. User adoption is carefully structured through what we call the show, practice, apply method. So first we demonstrate the solution, then users practice in a safe environment, and finally they apply to their actual work. And we complement this with regular check-ins and feedback sessions. This can incredibly benefit the utilization rate, especially at the beginning of the rollout. Now, the go-live period is when change management is most intense. We establish a clear support structure with different level of assistance, from peer support by power users to escalation paths for critical issues. Post-implementation, we focus on sustainability. This includes regular health check-ins, refresher training sessions if needed, and monitoring the user adoption metrics. The key here is to maintain consistent communication throughout, again and again. And on to our last slide, which is about the training sessions. Now, when it comes to training and enterprise implementations, we need to think beyond traditional classroom-style sessions. Instead, we're creating a comprehensive learning ecosystem that sustains long after the implementation team has left. This is vital for enterprise organizations need to maintain and grow their Odoo expertise internally. So we start by mapping out role-based training programs where every user group has different needs. A warehouse worker needs hands-on scanning practice, while a finance manager needs to understand complex reporting and dashboard capabilities. So we follow the train of the trainer approach, which forms the backbone of our knowledge transfer. So we identify and develop power users who become your internal Odoo champions. That's the first level of support, that's the closest to your office. And these individuals receive comprehensive training, not just in system functionality, but in how to effectively transfer knowledge to others, which creates a sustainable model for the longer run. Now, on the third point, your knowledge repository. It becomes a multimedia learning hub, right? Beyond written documentation, we capture video recordings of the key processes and training sessions. And these visual guides are incredibly effective, where users can watch and rewatch and learn at their own pace. So you'll have a library of videos of training sessions that grows alongside your written documentation, which together they create a rich, accessible learning resource. Thank you guys for showing up today. I hope this session was concise and informative, and on to our next sessions.